Meanwhile, we'll talk about some of the people who hope to replace President Trump. A Reuters Ipsos poll gives insight on who's going to make the cut for the first Democratic presidential debate in Miami. Former Vice President Joe Biden sitting at 30% comfortably, while Senator Bernie Sanders is at 15%. Senator Elizabeth Warren is in third now with 8%, Kamala Harris at 6%, and Mayor Pete Buttigieg with 5%, while Beto O'Rourke sits at 4% and Senator Cory Booker is at 2%. Amy Klobuchar, Tulsi Gabbard, Andrew Yang, John Hickenlooper, and Bill de Blasio all at 1%. The poll is especially significant since the DNC is counting it into who makes this month's debate stage. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is abandoning a long-held position on abortion. In remarks last night, Biden abruptly changed his stance on the Hyde Amendment, a 4-decade-old ban on using federal funds for abortions, except in cases of rape, incest, or to save the life of a woman. That came just a day after an exclusive NBC News report from Heidi documenting Biden's record on abortion, in which the Biden campaign reaffirmed his support for the restriction. Facing a swift backlash from abortion rights activists and at least 12 of his rivals for the 2020 Democratic nomination, Biden opened with these comments to a DNC gathering last night in Atlanta.
For many years as U.S. Senator, I've supported the Hyde Amendment like many others have. But we now see so many Republican governors denying health care to millions of the most poorest and most vulnerable Americans by refusing even Medicaid expansion. I can't justify leaving millions of women without access to the care they need and the ability to exercise their constitutionally protected right. If I believe health care is a right, as I do, I can no longer support an amendment that makes that right dependent on someone's zip code.
So that is a change, Heidi, of course, from Joe Biden, beginning in 1976, when the Hyde Amendment first came to pass, and again and again and again voting to uphold the Hyde Amendment until last night. And in fact, when your reporting came out 2 days ago, it contained, again from the campaign, an affirmation of his support for the Hyde Amendment.
It was a really stunning turn of events, Willie, because in my research, I saw that Biden not only went along to get along on this vote like a lot of other senators who said, hey, we can't pass our spending bills unless we agree to this because the Republicans will never vote for it. No, Biden's record was that he forcefully and very enthusiastically supported this amendment going back to its earliest days. I called them when I saw footage of an ACLU activist who seemed to get him to change his position. I thought that's big news. I called them. They thought about it for a while. I gave them plenty of time to think about it. They got back to me and they said, no, he still supports it. And of course, you saw what happened with the reaction to that by all of the presidential candidates, by all of the women's rights groups like Emily's List, like Planned Parenthood, who said, you know what, in this context, Joe Biden, you may have supported this your entire career, but we are in a moment here that we have not faced really since the inception of Roe, with the unprecedented assault on abortion rights. And I think we don't know exactly what went through Biden's head, Willie. We do know from our own reporters, intrepid reporters Mike Memoli and Mariana Sotomayor on the ground, that this really happened last minute. Even his aides, 2 to 3 hours before his speech, said that they didn't know what he was going to do. He seemed to not be reading this from the teleprompter and actually really speaking from the heart. And if you listen to what he said there, this is at a moment of acknowledgement from Biden that, yes, we are in a unique moment where with all of these laws at the state level being passed and also Planned Parenthood funding being under siege, you're seeing the number of clinics going down in states like Missouri, where you may only have one clinic left, in Texas. And what's happening at the same time is that you're seeing an increase in maternal mortality rates. So let's be clear here. The Hyde Amendment affects only poor women, low-income poor women, because we're talking about Medicaid funding. He obviously made the calculation that in today's modern climate, I cannot continue to hold this position.
You know, this is interesting, and I've said this at the beginning of Biden's campaign. People were very concerned, wow, he's got a long history when it comes to crime, when it comes to bank regulations that's going to sneak up on him. And I've said his defense is always going to be, look, I grow. I can change my mind. It's not changing your mind from age 40 to 42. And I think he's going to have the same Teflon feeling that Trump had. I think Democrats want him so bad because they believe he can beat Trump that they're going to let him go. You know what? I changed my mind. I changed my mind. So the very thing that I think a lot of the other candidates are hoping for, that there's a lot of stuff for the last 30, 40 years going to stick, I think this is the first in-action example of how he can gracefully pivot and voters are going to give him a pass.
But does it also, Donnie, look, as the Trump campaign has said, but others have said, that this is a cave to the left, that he's a devout Catholic, this is something he believes in his core. You know, he supported the Mexico City policy over the years, the Hyde Amendment, that in a period of 24 hours he heard noise from the left and quickly changed his core.
I'm going to go on the theory that ordinarily he would get the FF, the flip-flop. I think once he's going to have the same thing Trump had, this weird shiny halo, that people are going to let it slip off.
Yeah, but I think what's also going on, look, he's the front runner, and when you're the front runner, a lot of stuff comes with the front runner. It includes other candidates, either, you know, subtly, quietly, without using your name, pushing on you and saying, well, you've got a position that's not really tenable in the modern Democratic Party, which has moved to the left. So there's so much focus on him, and obviously the press also focuses on these quote flip-flops or changes in position, and they're not going to let him, quote, completely get away with it. So he's, you know, when you're the front runner, it comes with a lot of baggage, and it's not the easiest place to be.
It's also, Caddy K, the vice president has been challenged on not being progressive enough on some issues, that he's going to be the moderate guy that can appeal to the Youngstown and appeal to Scranton, win those states back. He has to make moves sometimes, it appears, a nod to the left.
Yeah, sometimes, and it's interesting that he chose to do so on this one. He clearly felt, you know, after Heidi's questioning and reporting that this was not a tenable position in the broader Democratic Party, because we know that Joe Biden is very focused on this notion that actually the Democratic Party has not changed as much as perhaps people on Twitter or on social media or some of the most vocal progressive voices would have us think that it has changed. And so he's not changing his positions on everything, but he did do on this one, realizing that that was out of step economically and socially as well with the Democratic Party's base, that because it hits poor women, and particularly because it hits poor women of color, who often are the ones that are seeking abortions in state if they can. And I think it's interesting to watch the issues on which he does change and where he feels that he's in step and where he's out of step with the Democratic Party as he sees it.
So here's the rejoinder to all of this. If Biden does become the nominee, the polling tells us that the majority of the public actually still supports the Hyde Amendment.
Right.
So what you're seeing here is that within moments of Biden switching his position, the RNC, the Trump campaign, all pouncing on this as a flip-flop. So while Biden has neutralized this, arguably, we'll see, in the Democratic primary, if he is the candidate, if he is the nominee, he is definitely going to get hammered on this by the Republicans.
Still ahead on Morning Joe. As U.S. allies gathered in Normandy, two other world leaders were meeting in Moscow. There, China's president called Vladimir Putin his best friend during a three-day visit to Russia. We'll talk about that next with Admiral James Stavridis. But
thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.